Grandpa Ned had learned to expect disappointment the way other men his age expected arthritis, as an unwelcome but inevitable companion. But this year, staring at the birthday card he'd bought for himself, because nobody else would, he decided 75 years on this earth deserved better than another cancelled celebration. The card sat propped against the sugar bowl on his kitchen table, its cheerful, "Happy Birthday," mocking him in glittery letters. Through the window, morning light cut across his backyard, where Sarah used to play as a little girl, back when he was her whole world. Back before she married into the Morrison family and their endless parade of important tournaments. Ned's phone buzzed. He didn't need to look to know what it said, but he looked anyway. "Dad, I'm so sorry. It's the semifinals this weekend. Todd's parents really need us there. We'll celebrate next week, I promise. Love you." Next week, just like last year's next week that never came, and the year before that. He set down his coffee, black, no sugar, the way Emma used to make it before she passed, and did something he hadn't done in the 3 years since his daughter's excuses began. He got angry. Not the quiet, swallowed-down anger he'd been nursing. Real anger. The kind that makes a man's hands shake and his jaw clench and his mind suddenly, crystallinely clear. Grandpa Ned had been a high school English teacher for 42 years. He'd taught thousands of kids the difference between passive and active voice, between accepting your story and writing it yourself. Maybe it was time he took his own lesson. He picked up his phone and started typing. Wednesday, 3 days before Ned's birthday. The Morrison family compound, because that's what Sarah's in-laws called their sprawling property with its tennis courts, swimming pool, and 3-car garage, looked like something out of a magazine. Ned had been there exactly twice, once for Sarah's wedding, once for his grandson Kyle's baptism. Both times he'd felt like a museum piece, smiled at politely, but ultimately ignored. Todd Morrison SR answered the door in tennis whites, racket still in hand. His smile was bright, practiced, empty. "Ned, what a surprise. Sarah and Todd aren't here." "I know," Ned said. "I'm here to see you." Something flickered in Morrison's eyes. Confusion, maybe, or the faint alarm of a man whose carefully ordered world had just developed a crack. "Of course, come in." He stepped aside, and Ned entered the foyer with its marble floors and chandelier that probably cost more than his first car. They sat in what Morrison called the casual living, was larger than Ned's entire house, and for a moment, neither spoke. Ned had planned this conversation in the car, but now, looking at this man who'd somehow become more important to his daughter than he was, the words stuck. Morrison broke the silence. "What can I do for you, Ned?" "You can tell me," Ned said quietly. "What's so important about a tennis tournament that my daughter hasn't celebrated my birthday in 3 years?" Morrison blinked. I'm not sure I understand." Semifinals, regionals, nationals, state championships. Ned counted them on his fingers. Kyle's tournaments, Amy's tournaments, the charity tournament you sponsor. Every single year, there's a tournament the weekend of my birthday. Every single year, Sarah cancels. "Ned, I had no idea." "I'm not finished." Ned's voice remained calm, but steel ran through it now. "My wife died 4 years ago, Emma. She loved birthdays, made a whole production out of them, decorations, homemade cake, the works. Sarah knows this. Sarah was there when her mother made me promise I wouldn't spend birthdays alone." Morrison's tan seemed to fade a shade paler. "The first year after Emma died, I understood. Sarah was grieving too. The second year, fine, maybe it was just bad timing. But 3 years," Ned leaned forward, 3 years of watching my daughter choose your family over me. 3 years of next week that never comes. 3 years of knowing that when she had to choose between being your daughter-in-law and being my daughter, I lost. Ned, we never meant. The tournaments, they're important for the kids' development, college prospects. More important than teaching them to honor their family, more important than showing them that when you make a promise, you keep it." Ned shook his head. "Your grandson is 12 years old, and he's never seen his mother prioritize her own father. What exactly is that teaching him about loyalty?" Morrison set down his racket, something shifting in his expression. "What do you want me to do?" "I want," Ned said, standing up, "to see if the Morrison family empire can survive one weekend without my daughter and her family. I want to see if, just once, Sarah can be my little girl again instead of Todd Morrison Sr.'s perfect daughter-in-law." He walked to the door, then paused. "You have a beautiful home, Mr. Morrison, beautiful family, impressive trophies, but I taught literature for 4 decades, and I can tell you this. All the trophies in the world don't mean much when the story ends with, and he died alone, surrounded by things instead of people." Thursday, 2 days before Ned's birthday. Ned didn't expect the phone call. "Mr. Shepherd, this is Barbara Morrison, Todd's mother." He'd met her once. She'd complimented his tie and then spent the rest of the wedding talking to the state senator. "Mrs. Morrison." "Please call me Barbara." A pause. "Todd told me about your visit yesterday. I wanted to apologize." "For what?" "For not paying attention, for not realizing that our family's enthusiasm for competitive sports might be overshadowing other important relationships." Her voice was measured, careful. "Todd mentioned you lost your wife. I can't imagine how difficult these past few years have been." Ned said nothing. "My father died when I was 45, Barbara continued. "Too young. I thought I'd have more time with him. I thought there would always be next weekend, next month, next year. There wasn't. I learned that lesson too late, Mr. Shepherd. I'd hate for Sarah to learn it the same way." Something in Ned's chest loosened, just slightly. "What are you suggesting?" "That perhaps we've built our family culture around the wrong priorities. Winning is important, but knowing what you're willing to lose to win, that's more important." Friday, 1 day before Ned's birthday. The text from Sarah came at 3 p.m. "Dad, can I stop by? I need to talk to you." He'd been expecting anger, defensiveness, the usual justifications about commitments and obligations and letting people down. Instead, when she arrived, his daughter looked smaller somehow, like the weight she'd been carrying had finally become visible. "Barbara Morrison called me," Sarah said without preamble. "She told me they're withdrawing Kyle from the semifinals." Ned's eyebrows rose. "They did what?" She said, Sarah's voice cracked. "She said that winning trophies wasn't worth losing family, that she'd rather Kyle learn the value of honoring his grandfather than perfect his backhand." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Dad, I am so sorry." "Sarah." "No, let me say this, please." She wiped her eyes. "When Mom died, Todd's family was so supportive. They took me in, made me feel like I belonged, gave me purpose through all their activities and events. I got so caught up in being part of their world that I forgot I was already part of a world. Your world, Mom's world." Ned opened his arms, and his daughter collapsed into them the way she used to when she was small, and the world was too big. "I thought I needed to prove I belonged with them," she whispered. "I didn't realize I was proving I didn't belong with you." "You always belong with me," Ned said into her hair. "Always." They stayed like that for a long time, and Ned thought about Emma and how she'd always known, had tried to tell him before she died, that Sarah was struggling with more than grief, that she was struggling with identity, with purpose, with the fear that if she wasn't perfect for everyone, she'd be enough for no one. "So," Sarah finally said, pulling back and managing a watery smile, "tomorrow's your birthday, and I hear someone has very high expectations for homemade cake." Ned laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. "Your mother did set a high bar. Good thing she taught me the recipe." Saturday, Ned's 75th birthday. The birthday party wasn't fancy. No marble floors or chandeliers. Just Ned's small backyard, a homemade chocolate cake that listed slightly to one side, and his daughter's family gathered around the picnic table Emma had picked out at a garage sale 20 years ago. But the Morrison family showed up too. Todd Sr. and Barbara arrived with flowers and a genuine apology. Kyle and Amy came with hand-drawn birthday cards that Ned would later frame. Even Todd Jr., whom Ned had always found stiff and formal, relaxed enough to laugh at Ned's stories about teaching Sarah to ride a bike. As the sun set and the candles were lit, 75 of them, crammed onto one cake, Ned looked around at the faces gathered in his modest backyard. This wasn't the story he'd expected. 3 days ago, he'd been preparing for another lonely birthday, another broken promise. Instead, he'd learned that sometimes the people who matter most are the ones brave enough to change. That tournaments would come and go, but the chance to show up for family, that was the real championship. "Make a wish, Grandpa," Amy called out. Ned closed his eyes, but he didn't need to wish for anything. He'd already gotten what he wanted, his daughter back, and the knowledge that he'd taught her one last important lesson. Not from a classroom this time, but from the courage to speak up, to demand better, to refuse to accept a story he didn't want. He blew out the candles in one breath. "Take that, 75, and everyone cheered. Sarah hugged him tight. "I love you, Dad, and next year, we're blocking out the whole weekend. No tournaments, no excuses, just family." "I'll hold you to that," Ned said. "I know," she replied. "That's what grandpas are for." And in that moment, with cake crumbs on his shirt and his daughter's laughter ringing out across the yard, Emma had loved, Grandpa Ned thought. This is what 75 years of living is supposed to feel like. Not perfect, not glossy, just real and messy and full of people who finally showed up. The glittery birthday card he'd bought himself was still on the kitchen counter, but tomorrow he'd throw it away. He wouldn't need it anymore. This year and every year after, he'd have the real thing.